Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So Razer has attempted to enter the IEM market with the Razer Moray, this one with a PR campaign geared towards streamers and gamers. And you guys know that we've spent a long time, a lot of hours testing IEMs for gaming related use case scenarios, particularly competitive gaming, to see if something is eligible for the Wallhack certification tier list that we have on this channel. In terms of the Razer Moray, I'll definitely get into my initial impressions for gaming-related use case scenario. I want to let you guys know, though, I will be giving away this copy. Just leave a comment in the description below and be subscribed to the channel to be eligible to win these by next Saturday. I'll pick one of you guys out of the comment section. I want to give back to those that spend their precious time watching the videos, interacting with me, giving me feedback, and giving me new ideas. You guys deserve it, and I appreciate the support. In terms of the Razer Moray, first and foremost, again, I think that after all the time and energy we've put into IEM reviews, we've really seen a lot of people now on the market leaning towards IEMs over the-ear headphones. And that's great to see. It really makes me proud for all of the effort that we've put in to see now that companies like Razer and a lot of pro gamers and just people in general, there's just so much chatter about IEMs for gaming-related purposes since we started our reviews. It makes me really happy. It makes me feel like we're actually getting somewhere. In terms of the Razer Moray, I like the fact that Razer has utilized a very comfortable ergonomic shell. That, first of all, the aesthetics look really pleasing. I think just the little razor there on the faceplate of the shell looks really good, and the silver mixed with the blacks looks pretty sexy. In terms of the ergonomics, it actually is a small shell, and the nozzle of the IEM is actually very small. It's not long, it's very thin, so I think a lot of people who have small ear canals would actually quite enjoy the ergonomic fit of the Razer Moray. The issue with me wasn't an issue of fit. The silicone ear tips actually did not have a good seal. So if you're somebody who likes silicone ear tips over foam ear tips, you might have that problem as well. You just can't get a good seal, at least I couldn't, which does affect sound drastically. It makes too much bass leak out of the IEM, causing it to sound even more open and even more shrill or just stale. In terms of the Moray with the foam ear tips, it's not drastically different than what I was just describing. It is a very flat and very still experience with a very flat frequency response, making it actually very hard for you to kind of separate things out. And it actually makes the soundstage just not something that I would recommend. Everything sounds a little bit further away from you, whereas being a little bit closer to you, not too close, not too far, really helps bring up the emphasis of the audio cues that are happening around you, particularly in the mid-bass region, picking up a lot of footsteps, or depending on the material that somebody is running on, some of your mids and upper mids for those purposes, or people reloading, even going into some of the upper regions. In terms of the Razer Moray, the issue wasn't necessarily for a gaming experience, one that was, for me, just this horrendous frequency response. It is not a pleasurable listening experience at all, to say the least. For me, it actually started giving me a headache after about 5 hours of play. And it's just because, again, everything is so shrill and everything is feels fatiguing. The quality of the drivers is definitely not that great, with the bass response and the separation from all of the frequencies being almost just non-existent. So, for instance, in Apex, if I am shooting somebody, all of the audio cues that are happening around me when I am the shooter and I am using just loud sound cues coming from my perspective, everything around me fades away, and it's definitely not helping that things are a little bit low and a little bit just further out feeling than they should be. In terms of when things are quiet in game and there are people shooting at a distance, you get a decent sense that somebody is further away, but there's no sense of air. There's no sense of how much space exactly is between you and somebody performing an audio cue that might be 40 meters, 50 meters, 60 meters. You can sense that it's further away. You just don't get that feeling of air and that representation of being able to say, oh, this guy is absolutely in this building, in this direction. When people were shooting at a distance, at elevation, I was able to pick up that somebody was at elevation or if somebody was at depth below me. But when people are close to you and the audio cues are then louder, it was actually just almost impossible to pick up the things that were happening around me if there was anything too loud going on. So the verticality takes a massive hit when those audio cues are next to you and there's multiple audio cues going on at the same time. Again, primarily because of a lack of separation and just poor separation altogether. And I think that's because you have a frequency response that is so flat that the sub bass, the mid bass is just drowning out the mids, and there's just not enough of a differential to kind of elevate those footsteps and elevate a lot of the audio cues that you would be looking for, like somebody popping a shield cell, somebody reloading, somebody's armor being cracked by your teammate. The things that are happening in the upper mids and higher frequency range are just muddled out just as much as the mids and the lower region is muddled out just because of how flat that response is. When you are cracking somebody in Apex Legends, and that means when you are shooting somebody and you crack their armor, you hear the pop, 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 pop. Yeah, it's a very fatiguing response on the Razer Moray, and one that's very hard to listen to. With grenades, when there are explosions, also a very fatiguing response that is a little bit more hard to listen to on the Razer. The imaging is only okay with poor depth perception and poor separation, making when anything is happening, the imaging almost fade away and become non-existent. You just can't hear anything. I would say that I would continue to review the Razer Moray. It is an okay IEM when nothing is going on, but for the fatiguing and just overall frequency response that just is not fun in any way, shape, or form. And there are plenty of things that have great frequencies that maintain phenomenal separation, phenomenal imaging, things that are even cheaper than the Razer Moray, like the Truthier Critical Zero. The only thing I wish with the Truthier Critical Zero, of course, is that it had a more ergonomic shell, that the nozzle wasn't quite as wide, quite as long for those who need a little bit better comfort. For a little bit more money, you have the Orchestra Lite that is just night and day of a difference compared to the Razer Moray and is an 8 balanced armature unit. And one thing that I was actually comparing the Razer Moray to, which is pretty spot on in terms of the price point comparison, is the Dunu Kima, which is a dynamic driver unit and just leagues above the Razer Moray. It is a warm neutral frequency response, but one that has a soundstage that is a little bit closer to you and one that has pretty damn good imaging, especially with depth perception and verticality. The Truthier Critical Zero is still my number one on my budget Wallhack certification tier list. But if you are looking for something that actually is quite comfortable with a warm neutral response, the Dunu Kima actually handles pretty damn well and has a nice little tiny fit and an all metal frame, which actually is really nice and fairly durable for the way that I've at least been throwing them around, and does come with the Dunu Candy ear tips that you can use for other IEMs as well. I like the aesthetic, like the ergonomics, hate the frequency response. I think if you were to get this IEM, you would be looking at solely using this for gaming-related purposes. I wouldn't use this for entertainment. I wouldn't be watching Netflix with this. I wouldn't be listening to music with this. You're kind of limited to gaming, and I think for gaming, it just has it all wrong. My biggest complaint was that the frequency is piercing. My second biggest complaint was just horrible separation. My audio cues blocking out almost everything else. Poor depth perception, just not enough air. The depth perception, I noted, it exists, But again, just not enough air, making it feel a little bit more 2D, almost like if you had a board in front of you and you were placing tacks on the board is almost how it was, instead of being immersed in your sound space and hearing those in a 360-degree radius. No fun with explosions, gunfire fatiguing, not great vertical signature. Let me see if I missed anything else. The air feeling overhead being blurry. And what I meant by that was in-game, if you had anything flying over you, if you had a Horizon Q, a Horizon Ultimate, or anything flying above you, just a horrible sense of that feeling of something being over you and flying over you so something coming from a distance and just flying over you was very blurry, and a poor job at separation and layering. So that is really, I think, my biggest complaints with the IEM, the biggest things that I've recognized. I think there's a lot in our budget list that just does too much of a superior job at a far less price. But again, there are things that I do appreciate Razer attempting to do. I really hope that Razer continues at it. If they are to perfect an IEM in this format with better driver configuration, better and higher quality drivers for the price, and a frequency that is actually tuned appropriately and something that really performs well for gaming-related purposes, I think that they would be a lot better off and might be able to take a stake in the IEM market. I hope that helped, guys. If it did, please leave a sub to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.